I was just wrapping up my patrol in the national park, ready to head back to base when out of nowhere, a tiny lion cub shot across the road right in front of my Jeep. My heart skipped. I slammed the brakes so hard the vehicle skidded sideways, red dust kicking up around us, stopping mere feet from the little creature. The cub froze in the middle of the road, mewing pitifully, its big amber eyes locked onto mine. There was this raw, desperate look, like it was silently screaming, "Something's terribly wrong." I jumped out and tried shooing it gently, but instead of running away, it leapt up at my legs, stood on its hind legs, braced its paws on my knees, and let out this plaintive, haunting howl. My chest tightened. How could anyone ignore that? Then it bolted, weaving into the tall, dry grass, glancing back over its shoulder as if to make sure I was following. I grabbed my backpack with water and rope, and we set off under the scorching sun, through acacia thickets, every step kicking up dust. 2 minutes later, the cub stopped at a wide-spreading tree and raced toward a depression in the ground, peering down and wailing in such despair it made my stomach twist. I approached cautiously and froze. It was a poacher's pit, deeper than a man is tall, its steep walls trapping a lioness at the bottom. She barely moved, her sides heaving with exhaustion, eyes clouded with dehydration, tongue dry and cracked, her fur caked in dust. The cub pawed at the edge, crying to her, but she couldn't reach. I grabbed the radio, heart hammering. "Base, this is Kofi. Emergency, adult lioness in a poacher's pit, critically dehydrated. Need a rescue team with a winch and vet, sending coordinates." 5 seconds later, Amber's voice crackled back. "Roger, Kofi. Kwesi and the team are on their way. 30 to 40 minutes. I tied a rope around the acacia, checked the knot, and began my descent. Feet pressed against the earthen walls, dust crumbling beneath my boots. At the bottom, the lioness followed me with a bleary gaze, weakly trying to growl. I crouched, pulled out my water bottle, and whispered, "Calm down, girl, I'm here to help." Then I saw it, a gray-brown ribbon slinking between the rocks, a sand viper, one of Africa's deadliest snakes, crawling straight toward her. The lioness didn't even notice. I drew my hunting knife, edging to intercept, slashing decisively behind its head. The snake convulsed, fangs bared, before I severed it completely and tossed the body aside. I turned to the lioness and eased the water to her lips. She lapped greedily, her eyes briefly brightening, relief flooding her gaze. Her paws were scraped, but not critically. I stroked her head. "Hold on, girl, help's coming." Suddenly, the piercing squeal of the cub rang out, the hyenas, 6 of them circling the pit. And in the middle, the tiny lion cub, fur bristling, giving its all in a high-pitched roar. Comical almost, but utterly fearless. The alpha approached, and the cub charged, claws scratching, teeth gnashing at a predator 10 times its size. The hyena leapt back, startled, the others scattering. I sprinted to the Jeep, grabbed a flare gun and shotgun, firing bright explosions above the hyenas. Red light, deafening bangs. The pack faltered but kept circling. The cub lunged again, desperate. I fired into the dirt at the alpha's paws, sending dust and grit into his eyes. The cub bounced back to me, trembling. I scooped him up, feeling his tiny heart pounding against my chest. Then thunderous engines roared. Rescue trucks appeared, kicking up clouds of dust, honking. The hyenas faltered, retreated. Relief washed over me, knees weak, hands shaking. Kwesi, Abina, Kwame, and Ajoa jumped out, ready. In minutes, the team had the lioness anesthetized, netted, and winched safely out of the pit. IVs, cooling compresses, tender care, she was finally safe. The cub pressed against me, exhausted but alert, eyes glued to his mother. Weeks passed. The lioness healed. The cub grew stronger, playful, fearless. And then the day came, release. I opened the cage in the morning light, golden grass stretching beneath hills, a stream shimmering nearby. The lioness stepped out first, stretching, paws sinking into soft earth, and let out a soft roar of pure joy. The cub followed, chasing butterflies in a frenzy of happiness. The lioness approached me, pressed her forehead against my chest, a silent gesture of gratitude. I stroked her mane, whispered, "Live long, take care of your cub." The The cub bounded toward me, standing on hind legs, the same gesture that first stopped my Jeep months ago. I crouched, scratching behind his ears. "You're the bravest cub." They ran toward the hills, glancing back to make sure I was watching, slowly disappearing into the savannah's golden haze, free again, safe and alive. For the next few minutes, I just stood there, watching them. The lioness led the cub carefully, teaching him the rhythm of the wild. The careful sniff of the grass, the way to pause and listen, the small jumps over streams or tufts of bushes. The cub, full of energy, tumbled and pounced but always stayed close, checking back with a quick glance at his mother and sometimes at me. I realized in that moment how fragile life was, and yet how fierce and resilient. They had survived poachers, hunger, exhaustion, snakes, and predators. And here they were, returning to the freedom that was always theirs. The lioness paused on a rise, silhouetted against the rising sun, and let out a roar that rolled across the savannah. It was neither weak nor pleading. It was pure strength, reclaiming her territory, her life. The cub tried to mimic her, squeaking a small roar, tripping over his own paws, but I couldn't help laughing quietly. It was innocent, hopeful, a promise that he would grow into his mother's strength. Then together they moved into the trees, the tall grass swallowing them, until all that remained was the golden shimmer of their departure. I stayed a little longer, letting the early morning sun warm my back. The park was quiet again, the chaos of the rescue now just a memory. My hands still tingled from adrenaline and my chest ached with relief and exhaustion. But more than anything, I felt gratitude for being in the right place at the right time, for having the skills to help, and for witnessing a tiny miracle unfold. As I walked back to my Jeep, I glanced at the horizon one last time. Somewhere out there, a mother and her cub were reclaiming their world, stronger, free, and alive, thanks to courage, instinct, and a little human help. And I knew that in that vast savannah, their story would continue, untamed and unstoppable. The sun climbed higher, casting long golden rays across the grass, and I drove back to base, carrying with me the memory of a cub's fearless roar, a mother's silent gratitude, and the quiet, enduring beauty of life that refuses to give up.